Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years, pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. This week on the podcast, I have the incredible Suzie Carmack on talking about both burnout for yoga and wellness professionals and a conversation on professional path and where we can shift towards in the future. I have to say, I'm seriously amazed at how many of the same avenues Suzie and I have both walked professionally, working with military, corporations, and C-suite folks, working with burnout. And we're both communication studies people, so swoon, truly, I really was very excited to have this conversation. Suzie actually even sent me one of her books, The Wellbeing Ultimatum, and it really covers a lot about how burnout works for caretaking professionals like us. And she provides us both in the book and in the podcast with some helpful frameworks to think about burnout and recovery, including my favorite gem, which is building peer support, even if you're introverted like we both are. But before we get into that conversation, would you do me a solid and like or subscribe to the podcast from wherever you're listening? That helps the algorithm show the podcast to more people like you so that we can get together and build some peer support. Also, as a reminder, issue 0 of Inside Yoga magazine came out this past December, and we covered all kinds of things. But one of the articles that was most challenging for me to write and most impactful in my thinking was called The Business of Belonging. You can read that article for free at thesunlightexperience.com/Bob issue 0F, and a link for that is in the show notes. Now, without keeping you waiting any longer, here is my interview with Suzie Carmack. Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. I am very excited about this conversation today. It's one of the missing pieces I think we have in the yoga industry as we talk about our professional work. So let me introduce you to my new friend, Suzie Carmack. Suzie, will you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Wow. Well, it's fun because I've had a lot of identities. First of all, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for having this conversation and all the conversations that you facilitate, I'm going to say the word provoke, but I don't mean that in a pushy way. I think provocative is where it's at, you know. I think that's what pioneering is being willing to go into that space. So I just want to call that out and say thank you for the image of like hacking a trail in the woods, knowing like we got to get somewhere. So let's hack that trail. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And just grateful to be here, truly. It's funny because I have a lot of identities for work, and I think yoga helps us to know that we are so much more than those identities. So one time I was doing a similar podcast and I said, I'm just a human that gets to do cool things, so like that would be my bio if I could. But in the 2000s, I was the gal that was bringing yoga into offices and was probably part of the whole chair/office yoga meets ergonomics stuff. Only because I was helping my own clients. They would be between sessions and they needed some practices. And so I would engineer these things that in my kitchen while I was cooking dinner and trying to wrangle my 3 kids. I was like coming up with practices for them to do at work. And then a lot of them were senior people. So they would come back and say, well, I'm not doing that at work. That's weird. And I said, well, you're the boss, like make them do it with you. And so then we started doing it together and there was a whole thing there. So like there's that. The person that's bringing yoga into, first it was offices, now it's really leadership. I like to think of it as
Nice.
self-leadership development. There's a lot in the leadership space about if you want to lead people, you got to start with yourself. And I think yoga as a technology, it's so much more than that. So come at me for calling it that. But from that point of view, that audience point of view, it's a technology, it's a system. Emotional intelligence gets a lot of applause in that space, and so it's never dull when I see people light up and go, oh wow, there's this thing that's been around thousands of years that can help us with that. So long answer to your question, but today I'm honored to spend my time coaching clients, sharing my coaching models that do weave in some practices that we know from yoga therapy, which is sometimes professionally highly charged and staying in scope of
That might be my
practice.
fault.
Yes. So, there I go. But I previously, some know that I was the prior chair before the amazing Dr. Amy Wheeler became the chair of what is
Mhm.
now the School of Integrative Health at NDMU, prior Maryland University of Integrative Health. I was honored to have that role, and was very blessed to be helping navigate the transition, et cetera. So I felt a yearning to go back to helping leaders and to really kind of getting yoga out there. And also, my own kind of personal models have started to take off with research. So I needed to call my own energy management to play, and step down from that role because it needed exactly what it has now, which is Amy's intellect and insight and
Yeah.
energy, and nothing but a fan there. So there's your circular bio, but just grateful to be trying to get yoga out to people who might not otherwise find it.
Yeah. Okay. So you were so generous to send me one of your books over the Christmas holidays, which I took with me everywhere for like a day and a half and made my way through it. And it was delightful.
God bless
And
you, and thank you both for that. the
I
work and the
even
compliment.
like I even took it with me to so I take myself to the symphony often. And so like on a Saturday night I was at the symphony reading your book during the intermission. And this
Wow.
lovely lady next to me, she's like, "What are you reading?" And so I'm explaining to her the work and what I do. It was lovely. We had a moment over your book.
So grateful for that. And thank you. That's meaningful. There's so many ways we can spend our time. That's meaningful. Thank you.
Well, one thing I love about it is it's part of what I feel is a missing conversation, which is a conversation about how we as care workers are caring for ourselves. And we have no good advice in the industry about how to do that. It's just like we're just dishing like shame and more asana to each other. And so I kind of want to dig into that today because my hope for the future of yoga is that we build a nourishing profession both for our students and for ourselves, and nourishing in all senses.
Mm,
So,
mm.
how do we do that here in the year of our Lord 2026 with the world on fire, Susie? We do this.
Whoa. Yeah. Well, behind me, there's a magic wand, and if only
Yes.
if it were that easy. But I digress, and I don't want to make light of the great question that you're asking. Uh, so too within, so too without. We've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
And I think, well, this is not a comprehensive answer to your question, but this is kind of my thoughts on it.
Okay.
I wrote Wellbeing Ultimatum, which is the book you're mentioning,
Yep.
in 2000. Well, it's kind of started in my head in 2013, 2012, and then I was sat down and wrote it in 15. And it was because I felt really isolated. I was doing what we now call yoga therapy. Didn't realize that was a thing at the time, working with people one on one. And things look good on the outside, and I was getting gigs, and there I am doing a thing, and then I was getting burned out on the very thing I love the most. And
Yeah.
I felt so isolated. And fortunately for me, I was actually, ironically enough, in a PhD program. How I got there is a whole other matter, but I was examining well-being as a health communication, really health promotion scholar, I was really curious about how do we promote this thing of well-being in general, yoga in particular, right? And then that ran me down this rabbit hole of realizing that in the psychology space, not what I was training in, but communication is a cool science because we get to plug into other sciences. So I realized that all this psychology, these amazing scholars in that space basically all disagreed with each other on what well-being is. So it's kind of funny. Like chemistry professors and scientists all agree on what chemistry is. They work from the same periodic table. Well-being science is all over the place. Happiness, flourishing, thriving, etc.
Yep.
And so anyway, I ran down this whole rabbit hole. Where I landed was, it doesn't matter. It matters what the person thinks well-being is and helping them get to that. So little did I know, I was stumbling on a central truth, I think, of what yoga therapy really is, which is helping people to define, I'll use the word well-being, big picture, little picture for their lives, their health, their lived experience, the roles they play, all of it. And then to come up with their truth so they can show up in service in this lifetime. So that was like the landscape. I wrote the book in part to kind of share out what I found on my little investigative journey there for 2 years, and also how I started applying what I had learned for myself. And I didn't want to come out and say, okay, here's 5 things you can do to prevent burnout. It was more of the framework of translating what, the koshas to practical living. And so my roundabout way of answering your great question, forgive me for not being direct, which is, I don't think it's about telling other people what they should or shouldn't be doing. And the joke about don't should all over yourself, like let's not should all over each other. It's about, it's funny, not funny, which is a phrase I use in my book, actually. Like, it's funny, not funny that I was burned out studying burnout and helping other people with burnout. Like, that's both awful and intriguing and insightful at the same time. But I think where it starts is us, sharing that out. Some yoga therapists out there, other yoga professionals, whatever their hat is, are out there doing the thing. They're helping people in the clinical healthcare space in licensed professions, physician assistants, et cetera, et cetera. And in that space, folks are starting to wake up to this important of heal thyself, being careful with one's energy before we go working with a patient and using their words. But guess what? Like, if we want to keep going with that, and not all of us do, fair enough, then we got to do that too. Like, totally. We got to be, Bhagavad Gita, like action, without attachment to result. So yeah, I think it's about supporting each other and doing the things we need to do. And sometimes that is so messy. To realize I was in the best job probably in the whole yoga therapy space, and to realize it wasn't right for me and what Dharma was asking of me and what my body was asking of me was really hard. And that was a decade after I wrote that book, right? It's like, I don't want to be disrespectful, but to me, it's an active recovery, similar to other recovery communities, where it's an everyday commitment to check in with ourselves and to do that sadhana and to sometimes make some big moves, some big, bold moves that surprise even ourselves.
Yeah. So, okay, let's tease out this burnout idea, partially because this is the work I used to do as a yoga therapist in my studio before I sold it and moved into the media space.
Okay.
So when I was working with people, I also work with C-suite people in that capacity as well. That was a lot of my work.
Yeah.
Is that I feel like we have this perception that burnout recovery is self-care kind of rest. Like you're going to get a journal and go to Arizona for a week and get out a big floppy hat, and then you'll come back and it'll be fine. But I think burnout is like flu rest. You just have to lay the hell down for a minute. Like and those two rests are both equally valid, but different. And we're really good at self-care rest. We want our journals and our flowy outfits. We're terrible at the lay down rest, which is frankly boring. No one's good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And can be everything you said, fan emoji here, right? Truly. And I think there's like It's interesting because that place of flu rest, as you call it, which I just love that metaphor. That's so good. It's not glamorous. It's not out in the
No.
open. It's not, look at me, I'm getting ready today. It's not, no. Like, and because of that, it can be isolating, which is
Yeah.
ironically one kind of piece of my work is exploring social support. As a introvert by nature, it's kind of hilarious that I discovered
Same.
yes, hello, in my well-being study, right, that social support, guess what? Humans that did not socially support each other did not survive. It's in our wiring. And so you couple someone who's likes to be independent, likes to be the one going into the fire when everyone else is running away, doesn't like to admit that the work they're giving to others is also something they need for themselves, is not socially, culturally supported in taking a gosh darn minute. And you got a recipe for some shame and some other stuff that I'm not saying I have the answers for, but I was trying to call out. Like, writing that book was as much about my own coming out to myself, about owning it, that I was feeling it, and trying to help those who might be feeling it too to feel seen. And it's been interesting that book has taken on a whole journey of its own. I think only in part because it's calling out that complexity, and the yeah. So anyway, I think we need to give each other a minute. And also it's okay to ask for help somewhere. Like, someone might need to go to Costco and get you some tissues, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this becomes extra complicated when
Yeah,
we're talking about yoga people,
absolutely.
because yoga is our practice. It is our spiritual practice, our personal evolution practice. It is our jobs and our business. And then we get burned out from all the yoga, and the only answer we give to each other is more freaking yoga. And like there
On
was
the nose. Yes.
like there was a point when I was running my studio, which at the end of that cycle I also was very burned out, and I can now say I just had to lay the heck down for a little bit myself as well.
Yeah.
Was I'm just like, I can't freaking escape this. Like,
Mm,
what if I just want to scroll TikTok and eat chips? like, like, how do we reconcile with the fact that our personal evolution practice and our business evolution practice and being good at business, especially heart-led businesses, is also a process of personal evolution?
mm.
Like, what if I don't want to evolve today, Suzie? Like, can I just wear sweatpants and eat popcorn?
Right. Action without attachment, like, there it is. It's here, I think it is easy to get caught up in our own kind of intervention, in this case, yoga
Yeah.
therapy. And I also think it's okay that we need another intervention. It's not the be all end all solution, but I know working with folks, a lot of the folks I work with don't even necessarily know when I'm coaching them. They hire me as an executive coach. I have that credential too. And I know it's blurry lines to be bringing in yoga therapy tools into executive coaching. If I ever do that, I call myself out and say, hey, I have an idea for a tool to share with you. Are you open to it? And then I explain to them what I'm doing. So I'm kind of sneaking in some yoga therapy education while I do that. But anyway, in all of that, I would kind of help someone to recognize, like, hey, Vijnanamaya layer getting into identity, and then Anandamaya layer getting into joy. Like, what brings you joy, Rebecca, would be my question for you, and not in a shaming kind of way. Like, if you want to eat chips and that's what's bringing you joy right now, like, have the chips, like, but what are you telling yourself when you eat them? I won't, out of respect, because I may have like translated their amazing teachings wrong, but there was a great teacher I got to take a workshop with, many over the years. But one of the teachers, I usually cite who it is, but in this case, I might have translated and decoded wrongly. So that's why I'm not saying their
I've
name
had that feeling
intentionally.
before too. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to, like, I want to give credit where credit's due, but I also don't want to mess up what people think about them. So I'm going to behave myself. Anonymous source that said, yeah, well, this is what we should be doing, for Ayurveda and et cetera and whatnot, doshas and, seasons and goodness, all that goodness. And then they're like, and sometimes we don't do that. But what are you saying to yourself when you're doing that? So to me, it's not about the chips. Like, what are you telling yourself? And if we are creating a professional culture where the norm is that, thou must get oneself back up again and be okay. And if that takes too long, then you're not regulating well enough, then gosh darn it, we're not helping each other. We are contributing to some of the ironically parallel universes that happen in a lot of the worlds I am honored to help. I've done some coaching in the physician scientist space. Wow, we've got a hybrid of healthcare and higher ed. Talk about culture problems and challenges, and opportunities, and like folks trying to free themselves and own what works for them and doesn't work for them in those norms. And so same with military, same with the intelligence community. Like these are different places where there is expectations, capital E, and it's redonkulous to think that one is going to forget those. So I love that you're calling out that this is happening, because I think that's part of freeing ourselves from it, is actually recognize that it's happening. It's that's part of the, shame doesn't like being out in the open. It disappears pretty fast.
Yeah. So first of all, it's continuing to amaze me how much overlap in the work that we've done. So I'm like, oh yeah, military people kept my studio alive during COVID because we live near a base. I live near a base.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of my yoga therapy clients are military personnel, because there's like NCOs and there's actual people in the military. All of those people exist in my area. So I've done a lot of work there, which translated to Fortune 100 companies and C-suite people as well. And so I have also done a lot of that work. And I think that sometimes there's a perception that those people are not open to the kinds of services that we offer as yoga therapists.
Yes.
And in fact, when you come into, say, a military community, they're 3 steps ahead. I don't have to teach them a safe space. They already know. They know how to deregulate or downregulate their nervous systems on the spot. Like, there's a huge advantage in those communities that, why don't we take advantage of this?
Yeah. Yeah. We're ready to go,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that you're doing that work and that you see that opportunity, and that's kind of, for whatever it's worth. It's reminding me of a conversation. I was honored to be doing like a guest kind of teaching thing for one of the yoga therapy schools, and someone came and said, well, they were all talking about where they wanted to do some promotion for their work, because that was the topic. And this one person said, well, I want to go to some of the local kind of healthcare places and share what I do, but they're not gonna accept it. And I pushed this human I've never met before in this public forum, which was all kinds of wrong and rude for me, but I did it anyway. And I said, well, how do you know that they won't be accepting? Like, what are you telling yourself before you even tried, And I think that's part of our yoga today. It's like, we can't, I was around in 2002 when there was like 10 yoga teachers or whatever it was. Like, watch the decades flip by, and like, yes, from a health promotion campaign, we got some challenges going on from an intervention, because we got mixed messages. From an intervention design campaign, we've got a problem because we're not an intervention. We're basically, I'm going to say the scary word, medicinal, in the fact that we're an intervention for one.
Yep.
That gets us into all kinds of trouble when we start talking about that space. But I think, there is something about that I think yoga therapy does that I think is part of the missing secret sauce that others who haven't discovered it don't know yet, which is that it's not about trying to put people in some kind of category or bucket or cookie cutter solution, to use those kind of leadership geeky words. Like, it's actually about taking a minute and really meeting someone where they are. And so part of that work, I think, to kind of draw a full circle here, when we meet ourselves with where we are and we own the fact that we're like, I need some chips today, thank you, or whatever the case may be, And knowing what is or isn't good for us, like, guess what? Other health professionals eat chips too, but like, but owning, investigating underneath it, like what might be going on underneath those chips without judging ourselves as we do that investigation. I think then that's only, it's not only about preparing to work with clients. So I want to be careful here. Like, and stop. It's good for us as humans to do that. We were fascinated with these tools, and I'll own it. I went in to become these professionals because I wanted to learn behind the scenes. Originally, I took Pilates and I wanted to learn how those people know how to do that with me. So I went and became a Pilates instructor. Then I wanted to learn yoga, et cetera, right? It's okay to like be our own support. And what I try to say in Wellbeing Ultimatum is Wellbeing Scholarship would say that is awesome, and get some objectivity when you can too, because that human mind will make up some stories, and sometimes we're not as okay as we think we are, and sometimes we're actually a lot better than we think we are. And it's only through connection with someone else objectively, peer, family member who can be real with us, yoga therapist, whoever it is, like we need the interaction, and we need the mirroring that comes with that. Purusha Prakriti, hello, right? So anyway, that was a lot of words, but I do hear what you're saying, and I think the field is ready. I think we've got to approach it just like we do with a client, which is like, what's going on in that space? Let's understand the norms, but not make any assumptions that a human that's living in that role identity, has what we think they have. Because when we meet them, 99% of the time, it's not the same of what we think it was.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do problem solving first. I have 2 questions in my brain, but I want to problem solve first.
Got it.
How the hell do we do this, Suzie? Because we need a collective network of some kind. We need some sort of professional support. And as of right now, we don't really have that for, a ton of reasons.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
I have kind of 2 thoughts. And I want to hear your other question too, so I'll behave. One thought is, I think as we're coming up with our own, I'm going to call it a self-management plan, you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Wellbeing Ultimatum, I try to boil it down because I was trained in health communication. I was trained to use like things that were easy for people to remember, not complicated, boil down science, not to mitigate it or water it down, but to make it practical. So here it is, 3 S's: self-care daily, social support weekly, services monthly. So it's like, okay, let me check in with myself. Sadhana is really what that is, right? Let me check in with peers, because one thing that we do know in the well-being space, we shift into ill-being when we start to isolate and or hide what's going on. So to have someone you're like, how you doing? And you say, fine. And they're like, no, you're not. Tell me what's really going on. I call that the backstage people. So like peer support is great. And even peer recovery is becoming a thing. And thank goodness in other medical communities. And, we need that too as humans. Like we don't have to be on this mountaintop or something. And then social services, which is like, sometimes I need services for something critical that is under the radar, hard, etc. And sometimes services is strategy, is working with a professional who knows more than I do, and to stop trying to pretend like I know what's going on. Like, let me get some help. Now, I know that's a privileged point of view, but I think we can do barters and trades, etc., with services. And if we're expecting, I don't always win friends when I say this, but if we're expecting people to hire us in yoga therapy, if that's what we're talking about, or even advanced yoga teaching, therapeutic yoga one-on-one, words to be determined as our field figures this out.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. I used to call it yoga personal training, by the way, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Because people get what a personal trainer is.
Yoga coaching, I've heard.
Yeah, and it's not trying to be anything that's not. If we're expecting folks to hire us and whatever that offer is, then it's not that, like, we need to do it too, or at
hire us,
or like, hello, energy flow of reciprocity, and I talk about this in Wellbeing Ultimatum. I call it superhero syndrome. It's like, it's not that we're trying to be a superhero. Real heroes don't want to call themselves heroes. Like, there's like so much to it, but to boil it down, it's like, you don't see Superman having to sit down and have dinner with his kids or changing a diaper. Like, you don't see but you see him answering the call to service 24/7. And so like you get the point, there's more to it, but basically like let's not pretend like we are superheroes that don't need to eat and sleep and have a minute and call in sick, right? Which is an entrepreneur problem in general. It's like you work for yourself. Yes. When are you giving yourself a day off? Like all entrepreneurs struggle with that. So anyway, so like that framework for me keeps me in check. If I'm like sliding on the self-care or over or under dependent on professional support and or, you know, it was a real moment when I realized, wow, like I'm talking to everyone about social support, but the only coffee dates I'm keeping are the ones that are work related. Like, oops, you know, like totally. That's not really helping Suzie that's underneath all the other Suzies, you know? So that's kind of one space. And, you know, I don't coming in awkward, to quote Brene Brown. Okay, here I go.
I'm ready.
I feel like the yoga community is like the music industry. The yoga industry is like the music industry because it's artists. I mean, yeah, we're scientists too.
But I love you, Suzie Carmack.
I want to hear more of your amazing nonverbal reaction there. So I'm going to like clip this, but I can go on. But it's like, a musician doesn't want to be in another band. They want to have their own band.
Yeah.
And so I think what happens with yoga, and I did it too, like I created a method, and I'm not even going to name drop it because I don't want to be a jerk here. But like I created a method and a system that I train other people in. I also didn't call it my name, which coming from the modern dance community, it's Graham technique, it's Lamone, it's Humphrey Weidman. I like tried to behave my yoga self and not call it after my name, but it wasn't about like, follow me and do it my way. It was more like, here's a structure for how to approach a thing. And so anyway, so like that has mixed results. And actually I'm totally okay with that because I don't want to make a franchise model of this system and have everyone, you know, anchoring into it. Do I want to create a community around it? Yeah. And that's actually something I'm, you know, kind of thinking about this year and working on. I'll just say like in general terms, but it's complicated because sometimes musicians love what they do and they become famous and, you know, prosperous with it, etc. And sometimes, like one of my buddies from college was a really successful lawyer in Pittsburgh, and he was in a band on weekends, and he is like loving his dharma and his karma. Like he's like a yogi without even knowing it, you know. And like he's not famous, and in that area, you'll check out his band, but that's not the point. So that's where I think it gets complicated when we say, okay, everybody, let's all migrate over here and be in this community, or let's migrate over there in that community. And God bless, and I mean this not sarcastically, but truthfully, God bless those who are trying to create those spaces, and they are out there. But I think part of the challenge is that the artists within those yoga teachers and those who are tapped into the creative source of who they are and how that mixes with their worldview, there's this resistance to be kind of tribal mentality because they've got that artist archetype going on. So what was the reaction?
Okay, because I've been writing a lot about this very thing in the yoga space the last half of last year and this year. And I feel like you exactly said what I think is missing in our discussions about yoga professionals in general. We're artists and creatives first, and we have to treat each other with that capacity and attitude. And if you want people to come in, give them paint, give them a way to bring their artistic creative expression into the space. And it's this piece that I see missing as we're trying to shove everybody into healthcare is an easy one to pick on. You know, we're trying to shove everybody into healthcare, but that's also not the only one. Right. We're shoving people into fitness, or like we all have to bucket into a category. And I'm like, have you not met us? Like, do you not know us? And there's this knowing of each other that I think needs to happen. We need to just look up at each other instead of focusing on our own little world. And when we see each other for the creative work that we do, I feel like we're less lonely, that it's easier for us to do our work together when we see that about each other. And I'm like so desperate for this conversation to happen, Suzie. Like, I really want us to talk to each other in that way that what we do is creative inherently.
Absolutely. Oh,
So,
so good. Well, thank
yeah.
you. And thank you for that writing and that work. And I think writing to me is like that conversation with consciousness and part of the creative flow and hacking the trail, like to go back to what we were saying earlier. And I call, okay, I'm going to do a name drop. One of my books is called Yoga for One. The subtitle is How to Co-Create an Inclusive and Evidence-Informed Practice on and Off the Mat, the world's longest title, right? But like co-create. Other book,
Yes.
The Chakras of Business, has co-create as the subtitle. Yes, if we think of ourselves as creatives, and hello, Einstein was like very creative. Listen, check out his quotes,
Yes.
not that I knew the guy, but like, hey, like check it out. But so I think you know, creative identity, I think, can go a long way for our field because it does give us that. In my book, Genius Breaks, I call it, like it's not a big thing. It's not a new thing in the online entrepreneur space to think about everyone's genius and what's your genius zone. And like, it's almost overused. It wasn't overused when I wrote the book in 17, but like it can trend towards overused. But the idea is actually quite yogic. Like, connect into your inner truth, the genius of who you are. Hello, your dharma, your call to service in this lifetime, and show up with liberation, which is part of the whole genius mindset. I don't care if my hair is a mess. I don't care that I'm doing this differently. Be with me or against me, and I'm okay. Like that action without attachment. It's all goodness, but I think giving each other some latitude, and not talking ourselves out of success before we start, which I feel like is a theme of what we were kind of alluding to earlier.
Yes.
I think there's more receptivity than we give folks credit for. It's almost like judging a client when they come in or expecting. Like, this is one thing I will say I cautioned when I was a professor of yoga therapy. I would, my 2 cents, whether it's stuck or not to students, is totally okay. But when I had the mic, I was like, look at the medical chart. I taught public health also in a Research One institution, George Mason University. So it's like, my public health master students will come forward. Here's my survey instrument. I'm like, the first question you're asking them is what gender they are. And the second one is what illness they have. Like, there's a person who's reading this.
Yeah.
That's not how they want to identify themselves. So we need to do the same thing, is where I'm going with this, is like, just because the pre-screen tells us like what's matter-of-factly happening in their lived experience, status, etc., demographics, in their psychographic experience, in their even health experience, their health chart, it doesn't mean we know Pittsburgh native were coming. We don't know jack about who they are, and it's time to like do that Men in Black thing, like click, like let me forget everything I just read. Let me first show up and listen, and then navigate. Okay, we do have these things going on in this chart, and we also got this amazing human that's in there.
Yep.
And that human has all the answers, So why are we not, and this is me not trying not to judge the field, but that's a curious question, is why not give that same gift of latitude to each other in the profession of it?
I think you're the perfect person to comment on what I'm seeing, because what I see when I go into those spaces is they're just waiting for us. They're waiting for us to catch up with our own worth. And what I'm seeing now is that there are absolutely healthcare professions who've been desperate for us for a decade, who are now just like, screw them, we'll do it ourselves. Like, who are just like, we're going to read a book and we're going to, take this weekend course and watch 20 YouTube videos. And if they're not going to own what their work is, we will.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Like, part of me is like, I want to fight them a little bit. And the other part of me is like, I don't blame them, because we are really struggling to take ownership of the good work that we do. And I want to give us all a hug. Like, I know we all have trauma. That's how we all got here.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give us all a hug and say, hey, like, our work is so valuable. People are just waiting for us to catch up with our own worth.
So good. Yeah. And enough said. I don't want to even mess that up. Like, let's just hang in that.
Oh, thanks.
Truly. Funny story coming. Well, at least it's funny to me. Wow. I'm a kid that grew up in a 1-bathroom house in Pittsburgh that was maybe 800 square feet. Okay. So blue collar blood all over the place. I'm this total nerd now, but first person family to get a master's, let alone a PhD, the whole thing, right? So like I hear myself say this and I'm like shaking my head, like, how did this happen? So years ago, my first marriage, I was a military spouse, so full disclosure, okay? And I was big time volunteer, resisted that, but that's another podcast. But found myself like in the middle of stuff, trying to help out. Next thing you know, I'm literally at the White House and with all these other military spouses are being recognized. How amazing, right? So there's this line, and the point of the story is coming, so hang in there with me. So at the end, the president does his remarks, and then Rose Garden, and then it's like all these people are lined up, and you can shake his hand or at least say hi and say thanks. It's like, okay, like throng of people go running to the first part of where they had the petition. And of course, introvert, there by myself, didn't have a lot of yoga tools to help me. So I'm like also socially terrified, right, at the time. Yeah. I'm standing there and I'm like, everyone's going over there, but there's the door of where he's leaving. I'm going to go over there. In part just to like avoid the crowd, because I didn't have the energetic know-how to realize like my energy system was like bonkers with all these people around, right? So I just go and I wait. Security kind of looked at me funny and I just was like, I'm just waiting, And then he came by and he said, thank you for all you do. And I said, thank you. And then he walked in. I think that's what's happening with our field, right? Like we're all there and everybody's like running to, what we really need to do is think about where's it all really going? And like, if we go quantum physics for a moment, like where's the hole? Like the hole in the universe is like right there. Like, where we need to go is to not be only looking at where it is today, but where it's ultimately heading. Couldn't agree more that there's a readiness and a craving. I also think that there's rudeness coming to healthcare professionals. Sorry, guys and gals and theys and all of you. It's like they're just beginning to tap into what we tapped in like day 5 of our yoga teacher training of like, wow, there's some cool stuff in this and I can just learn it and it can help me. Not realizing there's so much more complexity that we kind of get into the path and that we can't only do it for ourselves and that we can also be participants in it. Like those two things are not mutually exclusive. Have an intervention that's slimed on someone, not going to stick. Have an intervention the person tries to do completely themselves there alone. You're going to be missing out on what an objective person could see that you can't see because you can't see yourself. A butterfly doesn't know its beauty of its own wings. Like someone else needs to witness it. So, so all that to say, I think we need to look at the door of where it's going. And I even posted on something recently, like, everyone's talking about healthcare. I think there's value. I think there's openings, but there's a lot of other doors out there.
Yes. And also, we don't all have to go in the same door.
No.
Like there's more than one door for us. And what I dislike about what I'm seeing industry-wide, not just in the yoga therapy space, in the industry-wide, is that we have this idea that one door will save us. Whatever door that is, at the other side of that door is professional awareness and a big pile of money. And I'm like, okay. Like whatever Disney princess thinking we've got going on as a collective, let's step back and go, none of us got into this work to be rescued by someone on a horse. We got into this work because we wanted to do the work and it called to us. So at this point, I'm calling our careers bespoke. I don't even think we're portfolio careers. I don't know any of us that have the same path going forward. We've built this sort of beautiful and unique profession, each of us. And now maybe what we need to do is give frameworks for how to do that, because none of us are the same. And we need to stop and say, hey, it's okay that you're not the same as everybody else. None of us are the same.
There it is. There it is. No, it really is. And an angle on like kind of a point of view on the diamond of what you just said, like one facet to it, but it's not all of it by any means, is like there's identity of how we introduce ourselves. You saw, like, I'm an identity nerd, study identity, work with people in identity, but I finally got to the point where it's like, I don't really like attaching myself to professional identities. And at the same time, when I'm working in one, I behave myself and follow its protocols. So like, I just own the complexity of it, right? The yogi in me doesn't want to be bound. The creative in me doesn't like to be bound. But that all that's to say, like, we can't, how do I say this? It's like we can't go into identity discussions ad nauseum about the field of yoga therapy, what the expectation is of that billet, really, in the yoga therapy world, the professional line item on somebody's budget spreadsheet, right? And have that same artist creative energy that we were speaking about earlier.
Right. Yep.
And because and I think that's where those who aren't so jazzed, dare I say, against the whole licensure thing for us, I don't want to speak for them, but that's a piece of what I think their angle is. But to your point, there's identity of how we describe ourselves, to quote Maya Angelou, and then there's like, what offers are we putting out there? Like, I kind of think of it as need to know basis, like, call me an executive coach. Yeah. If that's what someone's looking for from a market perspective, call me a fill in the blank. And then we're going to introduce this kind of concept and philosophy and way of being that is yoga therapy. I know that the field needs to be recognized, so I don't want to be kind of naive about it. But as someone who kind of started doing it before there really was a field or even restrictions around what we were supposed to do or not do, to now where we're trying to figure out what that professional identity is and how far we want to plug into someone else's system. I will say that, for each of us, like, own the identity that works for you and create the offers that light you up where you can co-create value with the people that you're helping. And to me, it's like, okay, if my cover today is that you're executive coach, so be it, and in that process, I'm maybe introducing people to yoga frameworks and tools. And when I do step outside of that professional conduct, I own it and I share it. So it's a wild time. I'll just kind of land with, like, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But to your point, thinking we know what's on the other side of the door, thinking there's only one door, and thinking that it's going to be la la land when we get there, that's us not, I'm going to sound really shaming here. Like, the yogis in us and yoginis in us need to remember that whole action without attachment thing.
Yeah. I mean, I love us, but that's trauma talking right there. That's trauma talking. And like, as a person who has spent her entire life unpacking that piece of what happened to me as a child, like, I feel like I can say with confidence, I know you. I know what that looks like. That's us hoping someone else will rescue us when really we need to rescue ourselves. And we need to support, like it's not that we're on our own. It's that we're going to hold each other's hands while we rescue ourselves.
Yeah. I love
what
that.
I want for us.
I love that. Well, in the, a piece of that is definitely it's not necessarily trauma centric, but I really I'm grateful that you brought that lens to it, because I think that's so spot on as well. In the health communication literature, and very specifically the cancer communication literature, people studying, how people self-disclose there might be an issue, to check out, like, pre-diagnosis, right? Even getting treatment, all the way through the communication patterns of who do you tell, who don't you tell, how do you tell the story, et cetera. And so one of the things they find is that that process of not just telling others about the cancer, but also the framing of how they're engaging with the cancer makes a difference in their well-being and even their prognosis. And I'm not coming out like everyone needs to just cut to the end and pretend like it's fine. So it needs to be authentic is kind of a ground rule here. But, like, yes, it's okay, that in the beginning this is happening to me. What the literature calls victim framing, which I don't think is fair, but, like, that kind of thrust upon one without one's willingness, whatever that is, right? Then there's survivor framing of, I'm going to fight this thing. And then there's advocacy framing, where it's like, I'm not only going through this for myself, I'm going to help others along with this. I'm going to create a culture around this. And, we're going to get through this one way or the other together. So like that's what comes up for me, even with our field.
Yeah.
Like, why are we not doing more of that? Like
Yeah.
instead of fighting it, instead of feeling like stuff is happening to us, why not only get through it, but also that part of advocacy is agency, yes, but it's also collective. It's not isolated. And I do think it's naturally hard when you've got some creatives that want to be their own human, and do things their own way.
Yeah.
So there's a dialectic tension there for sure. But I do think that's where it really can go in a great place. And yeah, I'll just pause there. There's more, but I'll be good.
Well, I think that so how I see it, and I'm also a communications person. My major was comm studies, organizational communications. So
Oh my
like
gosh,
yeah,
yes.
like I have like also this weird passion for how nonprofits specifically work and how we can organize together to
Okay.
change our planet, to change what we're doing.
Right.
And one of the things that I saw was how we can do this in the US within states. So that's something that we've started, is just like talking within the state, and I'm in Iowa, together about what it looks like to work in yoga. That's it.
Mm,
Like, just what does it look like for us in this state?
yeah.
What is important to us in this area? And the minute I started saying that to other people, I had people in Illinois going, how do I start that there? How do I start this in Michigan? How do I start this in Wisconsin?
Awesome.
And I just thought, yeah, this is really, it's not that we're trying to start something new. It's that we're just trying to support each other in the work that we do. And what happens in Iowa, which is a primarily rural state with not a large population,
Right.
is going to be different than what happens in Florida and different than what happens in California. So it doesn't make sense for us to be advocating for the same circumstances in all of those places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just want us to kind of hold hands together and say, hey, so this is how we work here.
Yeah.
And farmers don't need an organization because farmers don't care. And if you go into rural communities, they're just like, well, I don't trust doctors and I don't trust psychiatrists and I don't trust lawyers, but I feel miserable. So what have you got? And they don't care about
Yes.
anything else. But if you go into New York City, they're like, I need every letter behind your name
Right.
before you go. And like
Right.
those things are inherently different, and it's okay that we're different.
Yes. Yes. There's so much there. The geography of it, the population of it, the cultural norms of it, the way of life
Mhm.
of it, all of that. And, to your point, I think we can't really fault, my opinion coming, we can't really fault people for like trying medical or healthcare models first. Like that's what we're taught to
Agree.
do. That's just, us kind of, following orders or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I think people do get to a place where they're willing to explore what else can be done. Whether it's the prevention, they see someone they love struggling and they realize they want to get ahead of that thing, as much as maybe hitting the wall of what the other solutions are or not giving. And that's where that, the openness you're talking to comes in. But I think one thing that I will say, there's so much talk between, I'm in the Pilates community and it's like Pilates people and yoga people from the outside are like, you guys are the same, right? I'm like, oh gosh, no.
No.
No. But it's funny because Joseph Pilates' original writings were basically saying like, he wanted people to move in hospital beds, which is why all the reformers and whatnot, right? Like he
Yeah.
didn't want to be moving their limbs around, which is what was going on in physical therapy at the time, like moving people. Like he wanted them to move themselves. And so there's something about, in all the integrative medicine sciences and arts, healing arts, like the person is a willing participant in the solution. And then that means that's where I go back to my premise that like every intervention is different, because the alchemy of that person facilitating that, which is the word I like to use, and the person receiving that or showing up for that for themselves, we're trying to kind of encourage their independence as soon as possible. But there's an alchemy that can only happen when there's more than one person. And so,
Yeah.
So anyway, I couldn't agree more. And I love the idea of us. Sometimes the conversations we have professionally are kind of conference based, and there's a place for that. Like what's going on in the field, what's research, like learning from someone who has a perspective live after you've read their book or whatever. Like, okay, yes. And I think there's that peer to professional peer support thing that you're talking about, where it's like a really good networking event where you don't feel like someone tried to hit you up for work 5 times, like your LinkedIn feed, but you
Totally.
actually feel like you had a meaningful conversation. So I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more.
I feel like that's healing and artistry put together, which maybe that's us. Maybe that's what we are. We're at the intersection of healing and artistry. Is that us?
I'd like to think so. I think
Yeah.
there's art and science. I think there's science and art. And
Yeah.
I think the art of it is the creation part that you were talking about earlier. And that's healing is knowing, compassion is digging Gilbert and Choden 2014 or something like compassion is knowing, seeing into the roots of suffering and knowing that there's a solution possible. And then it's kind of like inferred, even if you don't see what it is yet. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what the healing arts give us, is like that kind of blank canvas view, where we're
Yeah.
not trying to think we know what's on the other side of that door, to kind of put all our metaphors together today. But that's kind of the point. How do you know that you're not going to get better? How do you know you are? Like, there's a trust and a faith that comes in, and the healing arts are part of that. Like, what life can we create? Someone said to me the other day, like, hey, well, yoga therapy is going to help people prevent their illness. And I respectfully pushed back. I said, well, 70 to 80% of the population in the US has a chronic illness, and I'm one of them. I have a couple, actually. So, like, talk about shame, right? How can I help
Yeah.
someone with their health if I've got an issue? It's like, well, why not me? Like, I totally get what the lived experience is like and the complexity. And that doesn't preclude or get in the way of, I'm blessed to be cancer free now, but having had an oncologist that didn't know what it was like to have cancer is totally different if you have one that did. Like, lived experience matters
Yeah.
here. And lived experience matters. And I think that's one thing that we bring to the table through our yoga. It's like dance that way. Martha Graham once said, dance is the stuff in which ourselves are made. Like, we are that. And so yeah, healing arts. Yes. Long-winded. Yes.
Suzie, will you tell everybody where to find you so they can buy your books and be obsessed with you? Because now I'm also obsessed with you, and we're going to be best friends. So we've got that going for us. How do we find you?
Oh my gosh, I am so grateful, and that's deeply meaningful to me, and I see that too. So, and I want to hear so much. There's so much work you're doing. I'm like, please, I want to hear that. Yeah, so I'm on drsuziecarmack.com. So that's that. And then my kind of company is called Yoga Medco, and the idea of yoga, lifestyle medicine, and coaching together, and to think about how we can create a space to support people in that individualized way of being. Both yoga adapted for chronic disease as well as work-life well-being is really our focus. And so I'd like to also think that just because someone shifts into the professional and gets their certifications or their degrees, someone who's done that too, that doesn't mean we don't have lived experience with those things too. And so that's what I am trying to build in our community, is a space where people can be both and not feel like they have to be or.
Nice. Thank you so much for this. This
It's
was
my
amazing.
honor. Thank you. And thank you for facilitating the conversation, for stimulating this conversation. Love hearing that folks in different states are already like, I'll have what she's having. We do that. And truly thank you for what you're doing. To be first is hard, and it's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation, Suzie. I really loved it. There was so much that we talked about on the podcast that I know is going to be in my train of thought for weeks, but a couple things really stood out for me. First was this idea that well-being researchers didn't have a common definition of what well-being actually means for them. It got me thinking about what well-being means for me, both personally and professionally, and I'd be super curious to hear what it means for you. And the second was me really getting solid about what brings me joy. This is something that I also tell other people to do and hadn't really thought about or sort of updated my thinking about for myself in a while. So after Suzie and I recorded this podcast, I took a long, hard think about what brings me joy and what that means for me. So how about you? What does joy mean for you? Next week on the podcast, I have Gloria Hester on talking about her work in the intersection of yoga therapy and animal care. I'm making a concerted effort to showcase as wide a scope of how people are using their yoga and yoga therapy skills in different ways. And I think you're going to be so interested in the work that Gloria is doing. Until then, let's get back to work, my friends, and I will catch you around the water cooler next time.